Imagine for a moment a world without money. No bills, no coins, no digital transfers. Sounds like a utopian dream, right? But what if I told you that beneath this seemingly idyllic surface lies a chilling truth, a hidden history of radical experiments, and a future far more unsettling than you could ever conceive? What if the absence of currency didn't bring freedom, but instead unlocked a different, more pervasive form of control? To truly grasp the unsettling implications of a world without money, we first need to understand why we invented it in the first place. For millennia, human societies relied on bartering, item for item, skill for skill. But bartering is clunky, inefficient. How many chickens is a cow worth? What if the person with the cow doesn't need chickens? Money emerged as a universal medium of exchange, a store of value, a unit of account. It streamlined transactions, fueled trade, and allowed for specialized labor to flourish. It built empires and funded revolutions. It's woven into the very fabric of our civilization. Yet the dream of escaping money's perceived shackles has persisted throughout history. From ancient communal tribes sharing everything to utopian socialist ideologies of the 19th and 20th centuries, thinkers and societies have grappled with visions of a world where wealth accumulation isn't a driving force. The Shakers in America, for example, lived in self-sustaining communities, striving for spiritual purity and communal ownership, where individual possessions were minimal and labor was shared. Their economic model, though driven by religious zeal, was fundamentally moneyless within their own societies. Then there were the more radical political experiments, like early Soviet Russia's attempts at a war communism, where the state tried to abolish money for certain transactions, replacing it with direct resource distribution. They even issued non-monetary labor books as a form of social currency. These attempts, almost without exception, collapsed under their own weight, not just due to external pressures, but because of an inherent clash with human nature and the complex intricacies of resource allocation. The vision was grand, but the execution often led to chaos, famine, and the inevitable reemergence of black markets and informal economies, driven by basic human needs and desires. So what really happens when you try to pull this thread from the tapestry of society? The immediate assumption is endless abundance, everyone having what they need. But without a universal medium of exchange, how precisely do goods and services get distributed? Who decides who gets what? How are preferences weighed? Without the natural ebb and flow of supply and demand, mediated by price, resource allocation becomes a centralized, authoritarian nightmare. Imagine a central committee dictating how many apples each household receives or which jobs need to be filled. Dissatisfaction would simmer, leading to black markets and unofficial currencies, perhaps rare collectibles, favors, or even reputation points. Take the chilling thought experiment of labor vouchers. Instead of money, you earn non-transferable vouchers for the hours you work, which can then be exchanged for goods and services of equivalent labor value. Sounds fair, right? But what about highly skilled, specialized labor versus menial tasks? How do you quantify the labor value of a doctor's surgical expertise compared to a street sweeper? And if a doctor's work is deemed more valuable, wouldn't they accumulate more labor vouchers, effectively creating a new form of wealth and inequality? Moreover, who produces luxury goods in such a system? If everyone's basic needs are met, what incentive is there to innovate, to strive for excellence, to create something extraordinary that isn't strictly necessary for survival? The driving force of human ambition, often tied to perceived rewards, would be severely curtailed or redirected in ways we can barely imagine. But the true darkness of a moneyless society emerges when we consider control. If a central authority manages all resources, then access to those resources becomes the ultimate lever of power. Your behavior, your compliance, your perceived utility to the collective could become the new currency. Without money to enable independent transactions, dissent becomes impossible. You cannot buy resources for a protest. You cannot fund alternative publications. You cannot escape the system's watchful eye. Every essential resource, from food to housing to healthcare, becomes a tool for societal engineering. We've already seen glimpses of this in nascent social credit systems emerging in some countries, where good behavior is rewarded with access to better services, while bad behavior leads to restrictions. In a truly moneyless society, this concept is amplified a thousandfold. Your social score would dictate literally everything. Imagine needing a new pair of shoes. In our world, you go to a store, pay for them. Simple. In a moneyless world, you'd apply for them. An algorithm, perhaps, would evaluate your need based on your work contribution, your societal engagement, your health metrics. Perhaps you're deemed too sedentary to need new running shoes. Perhaps you've consumed more than your allocated share of clothing this quarter. The system, designed for efficiency and equitable distribution, could easily become an inescapable digital prison. Instead of economic markets driven by supply and demand, we would have administrative queues and rationing protocols. The black market would likely evolve into a complex system of favors, underground bartering using precious, unregulated items, or even a nascent form of social capital where personal influence and connections become the ultimate currency. What they discovered next changed everything. The ultimate, most chilling iteration of a moneyless world would be one where human value is quantified and constantly evaluated, not by the market, but by the state. This is not about a lack of physical currency. It's about the complete absorption of individual economic autonomy into a centralized, omnipresent system. Your value isn't reflected in your bank account, but in a vast, interconnected ledger of your actions, your compliance, your every decision. Want to travel? Your social credit score dictates if you're worthy. Want a better home? Your contribution rating determines your eligibility. Individual initiative is stifled, as all incentives are geared towards adherence to collective norms. The concept of personal ambition, entrepreneurship, or even simple independent choice would be eradicated, replaced by a meticulously planned existence where every resource, every opportunity, is a reward for conformity. This isn't just theory. We've seen totalitarian regimes in the past attempt to exert absolute control over economic life, and the results have always been catastrophic for individual freedom, for economic prosperity, and often for human life itself. The inherent human desire for agency, for choice, for personal betterment cannot be simply legislated away. It will find an outlet, often in destructive ways. To this day, we may never know the full horrors such a society could unleash. The dream of a world without money, often presented as a path to equality and liberation, could in reality be the ultimate instrument of control, reducing individuals to mere cogs in an inescapable machine, where financial chains are merely replaced by invisible, yet far more binding, societal ones. The true cost of this utopia is the very essence of human freedom and individuality. If you want more mysteries like this, the next video explores the secret societies that covertly influence global economics and their vision for the future of finance, a vision that may be closer than you think.